I'm honored and glad to be here with you today to speak on this topic of such importance, not only for our industry, but for the success of the green transformation as a whole. And of course, much of the impact will be felt and will have to be managed in the regions. Um, Next slide, please. Just a few words on CLIPA. We represent over 3,000 companies, large and small, global suppliers, also SMEs, niche manufacturers, also national associations. Our sector basically designs and manufactures all of the components and systems that are needed to achieve the ambitious goals for transport, and we're very much therefore in the front line of the transformation. And with 1.7 million direct employees on top of the 1.2 million employees with the vehicle manufacturers, there is clearly a lot at stake when talking about the social dimension of the transition, as well as the competitiveness of our economies. The next slide, please. And in quick succession, I'll take you through a couple of slides to do a bit of scene setting. We fully support the Paris Agreement with the ambitious objectives of achieving climate neutrality by 2050. It's the biggest transformation in the history of our industry that we have to go through, but very committed to do so. And it's also, of course, imperative in our mind that we do this in a thoughtful and a manageable way that preserves industry competitiveness and jobs while not compromising on climate targets. The next slide, important message again, transport and mobility are key to keep our society and economy moving, and therefore it needs to be accessible and also affordable. Next slide then brings me to Green Deal, where we say, let's make it work. Let's make it work together. Society's needs are far too diverse for a one-fits-all approach. We need to work together and also keep everybody on board. The next slide shows you the complexity of the Fit for 55 package presented by the European Commission last summer, which is now with the European Parliament and the member states. But we do welcome the holistic approach taken by the Commission to look at the different elements: renewable fuels, renewable energy, taxation, market incentives, also ambitious technology targets. We do think, however, they can be much better linked, can be made to work much better. And on the next slide, you see visualized what is our biggest concern, which is the de facto ban on the combustion engine and combustion engine vehicles and its technology. The next slide shows you why there are no silver bullets. Different transport needs will require different technologies. So a regulatory framework that is open to all available solutions, like the use of hybrid technologies, green hydrogen, also renewable, sustainable fuels, that will enable innovation and choice as we redefine mobility on the way to 2050. And that's why we say on the next slide so very clearly, ban fossil fuels, but not the internal combustion engine. As much as an electric vehicle is only as green as the source of electricity used to power it, a hybrid petrol or diesel engine can be climate neutral with defossilized fuels. The current Commission proposal does not value the contribution of sustainable renewable fuels. And this slide and also the next few show you how this recognition can be obtained in the current regulation through a voluntary crediting scheme. And I welcome all of you to have a closer look, but in the interest of time, I would like to move to the other important dimension of all of this, jobs and manufacturing footprint. So if we can move to slide 14, which has the title Success Starts with Knowing the Stakes. Indeed, this one, thank you. I said it before, 1.7 million direct jobs at stake. An estimated 30 to 40% of revenues and employment in the automotive industry is currently tied to the powertrain. As CLIPA, we have done a study together with PricewaterhouseCoopers Strategy and this study will be officially launched on the 6th of December. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek today. But this study also confirms that automotive suppliers alone employ around 600,000 workers whose work depends on the internal combustion engine. And the production of battery electric vehicles will create new employment opportunities, no doubt about it, but overall less employment opportunities because they're simply less labor intensive, and it's also a more automated type of job. So many livelihoods are affected, will be affected, and that's why it's critical that we assess different policy approaches going forward. And this is what we have done with the study. So the next slide gives you an idea of the objective of the study. We wanted to understand what 3 market scenarios do, each including accelerated electrification. What do they mean for the European auto supply industry in terms of value add and also employment? And we also had a focus on 7 key automotive markets. And the 3 scenarios are essentially the current Green Deal Fit for 55 approach, which is an electrification only approach. The second scenario is a mixed technology approach with hybrids and also renewable sustainable fuels included. And then there is a radical approach, basically an even steeper timeline of electrification. The next slide shows you the key findings of our study. An EV only, electric vehicle only approach puts powertrain employment significantly at risk. We knew it was going to impact employment. I think we're all already for years preparing for it, but it confirms that the risk of an EV only approach is actually amazingly significant. Only in the powertrain domain, 500,000 jobs are at stake, and the net loss of jobs is 275,000. So that includes the gains made in EV powertrain employment. Value add will depend for about 70% on EU battery production. So this is, of course, in the building up phase, but it's not entirely there yet. So the assumption is that this will happen, but it will take time, and there are many uncertainties also attached. The study also shows that a mixed technology scenario mitigates the employment impact and creates value add without compromising on climate targets. And this is, of course, because you have a larger share of hybrid technologies still available. And last but not least, Western European countries will be likely best placed as strongholds in electric vehicle production. And by contrast, Central and Eastern European countries will shape the rundown of ICE vehicle production. A few more slides on the study. The next one takes a deeper dive on the 500,000 jobs that risk to be lost in the ICE domain. This is 84% of the current workforce in the powertrain section with suppliers today in Europe. New jobs will be created, but it's not a one-to-one compensation from ICE to electric vehicle employment. It will concern different companies, skill sets, different regions, and also different locations. So, a real challenge also to manage there. And there's also a difference in timing. Most jobs in EV will be developed now in the next few years, and then the huge losses will follow in the years between 2030 and 2035. Next slide, more details on value add. As I said before, the assumption really is in all of this policy approach also that there will be a really substantial battery value chain build up in Europe. So the big questions still are, how will investment happen and in what time frame? And we believe it's quite a big challenge to go for an electrification only approach without having a backup plan, a safety net. A mixed technology approach, again, without compromising on climate targets, would help mitigate risks and create a more manageable transition. Next slide. tries to explain also that we're really looking at the policy choice here between transition and disruption. This transformation is there, it is happening, it needs to happen because we want to go climate neutral, but it's also just around the corner. And within an industry that has to work with cycles of around 5 to 8 years for production, timing is really very, very short, and any and every year matters. So social disruption due to a badly managed transition could really also undermine the ability of the Green Deal to succeed and cause long-term damage to our economies and societies. And this is also true with regards to and upskilling. CLIPA and our members are very active in this area. I know Jakob Stolfa of the Automotive Skills Alliance will do a presentation later. That's why I don't focus very much on this dimension, but we're actively involved. It's really, really important, and also they're often working closely together with academia, with regions, with clusters as it needs to be. The next slide maybe is the biggest worry that we have. Will automotive suppliers specifically be left behind in all of this transition? OEMs don't have it easy, vehicle manufacturers, but they have it easier. They can easier insource, they can buy their supplies elsewhere. The main employment and also manufacturing footprint challenge is with the automotive suppliers, and that's why we call for this attention. We have done this study, we really raise the flag. It should get more attention than it currently does, and we do have options, we do have alternatives that should be considered also in policy making. The next slide is a geographical breakdown of the electrification only scenario. As I said before, we focused on 7 countries. Together they cover about 75% of European automotive production, so a significant share. I think this also signifies again the differences in development in Western Europe, in Central Eastern Europe, also difference in timing. Happy to go through this and to inform you in a bit more detail, but I think the detail is not possible here and now in this context. But again, happy to also follow continue the conversation offline and bilaterally. Next slide. To sum it up, as far as our study is concerned, an electrification-only policy leads to a steep decline in jobs in just a 5-year period. A radical scenario is entirely unmanageable, and the mixed technology approach provides employment growth and stability. And that brings me really back to our key messages on the Fit for 55 proposals, summed up on the next slide. Electrification is an essential technology, an essential solution. Rapid electrification is needed, but we should also move away from measuring CO2 emissions at the tailpipe only. We need to move to a well-to-wheel approach, recognizing also the role of sustainable renewable fuels, which is a viable and essential way forward. The next slide shows you some respectable voices about their business strategies. We know individual business strategies of some, such as Volkswagen here in the middle, may get the most attention, beating the drum of electrification only, but there are these very respectable other voices and strategies too, BMW on the left, Toyota on the right. We need policies and regulation that cater for all of industry and society. And I was really glad to see that even in the COP26 in Glasgow, this element of the discussion got a bit more attention. It's less black and white, and I think that's really necessary to bring this to a conclusion for all of society and economy and workers included. Next slide, making it work, the policy options once more. In a nutshell, a helpful overview of policy options and instruments needed to make this transformation work. And the last slide, the Green Deal is really about accelerating the transition. No question that this transformation is really needed. It's not about if, but it's really about how. I hope I have given you a bit more food for thought. I look forward to any questions you may have, and thank you for your attention.